What if one invention could rewrite everything you thought you knew about technology, and leave the world stunned? Imagine waking up one morning to a news headline that shakes the very foundation of our future. This is exactly what happened when Elon Musk, the man known for pushing humanity to the stars and beyond, took the stage in a packed auditorium in Silicon Valley and revealed something no one expected, a device so revolutionary that it promised to change the world forever. The tension was palpable. Reporters, scientists, investors, and everyday people held their breath as the presentation began. The air buzzed with curiosity, excitement, and a hint of disbelief. What could this invention be? How would it impact the lives of millions, if not billions, around the globe? You might be watching from a small town in Iowa, a bustling city in New York, or even a quiet suburb in California. Wherever you are, this story could spark a new beginning, not just for you but for the entire world. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? These questions matter because behind every great invention lies a story filled with struggle, hope, and human determination. Elon Musk is no stranger to challenges. His journey has been marked by breathtaking highs and gut-wrenching lows. As the spotlight shone down on him that day, it illuminated not just a brilliant mind but a man who had fought to bring his vision to life against every odd. The invention itself was unveiled with a dramatic flourish, a sleek, compact device humming quietly with untapped power. Musk explained that this technology could provide clean, limitless energy, potentially replacing fossil fuels and ending the era of climate crisis. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and stunned silence. Skepticism rippled through some corners, but hope glimmered in others. Would this invention live up to its promise, or was it too good to be true? The stakes couldn't be higher. The world had waited long enough for a breakthrough like this. From the very beginning, this story is not just about technology, it's about people, those who dare to dream and those who fight to turn dreams into reality. What happens when ambition meets resistance? When trust is tested, and sacrifice becomes inevitable. This is the story of Elon Musk's newest invention, a journey through doubt, betrayal, hope, and triumph. As you follow along, consider what drives you in your own life. What keeps you going when the path is uncertain? The story will take you through the depths of human emotion and the heights of innovation. It will ask you to believe in something bigger than yourself and maybe, just maybe, inspire you to create your own future. Stay with me, because what happens next might just change everything you thought was possible. Elon Musk's early life. Elon Musk's story did not begin in the gleaming skyscrapers of Silicon Valley or the gleaming launch pads of SpaceX. It started in Pretoria, South Africa, where he was born in 1971. From a young age, Elon was different. While other children played outside or watched cartoons, Elon preferred to bury himself in books, devouring everything from science fiction to encyclopedias. His mind was restless, hungry for knowledge and discovery. But his childhood was far from easy. His parents' marriage was strained, and the household was filled with tension. Elon's father, Elon Musk, was a complex man, brilliant in his own right but often harsh and difficult. Their relationship was a tangled mix of admiration and conflict, leaving Elon with deep emotional scars. The isolation of growing up in a country struggling under apartheid only added to his feelings of loneliness and drive to escape. Elon was small for his age, introverted, and often the target of bullies at school. Yet, instead of breaking him, these hardships fueled his determination. He learned early on that if he wanted something different, he had to create it himself. At age 10, Elon taught himself computer programming and built a simple video game, which he sold to a magazine for $500. This early success was a spark, a hint of what was to come. His mother, May Musk, a model and dietitian, was one of his greatest supporters, encouraging his curiosity and intellect. She nurtured his dreams even when the world around them seemed hostile or indifferent. Elon's relationship with his younger brother Kimball and sister Tosca also provided a sense of grounding and family, though each sibling followed very different paths in life. By the time Elon reached high school, his passion for physics and engineering was undeniable. He spent countless hours tinkering with electronics and dreaming of space exploration. But South Africa was not the place where his dreams could truly grow. At age 17, Elon made the difficult decision to leave home and move to Canada, seeking a new start and the freedom to chase his ambitions. This move was as much an emotional journey as a physical one. Leaving behind his family, friends, and the familiar was terrifying and lonely. He arrived with little money and few connections, relying on sheer grit and determination to get by. In Canada, Elon enrolled at Queen's University and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied physics and economics. These years shaped his worldview and sharpened his skills. He was no longer just a curious boy from South Africa but a young man hungry to make a difference on a global scale. His relationships during this period were complex. Elon was often described as intense and driven, sometimes to the point of obsession. He struggled to balance his personal life with his relentless work ethic. Romantic relationships came and went, many strained by his unwavering focus on his goals. Yet, love and friendship remained important to him, grounding him through turbulent times. His first serious relationship with Justine Wilson, whom he married, was both a source of support and heartache. Their marriage produced 5 children, and though the relationship eventually ended, it left an indelible mark on Elon's understanding of sacrifice and family. These early emotional experiences, joy, loss, love, and frustration, would become the foundation of his complex personality. They explain much about the man who could dream of colonizing Mars but also struggled with deep insecurities and doubts. At the same time, the early days of Elon's career were a roller coaster. He co-founded Zip2, a software company, which was eventually sold for nearly $300 million. Then came X.com, which later became PayPal, changing the way people think about online payments. These successes brought wealth and fame but also public scrutiny and intense pressure. Elon learned quickly that innovation is rarely smooth or simple. Failures, betrayals, and setbacks were part of the price for dreaming big. Despite the growing media attention, Elon remained intensely private about his inner struggles. Few knew about the sleepless nights spent worrying whether his companies would survive or whether the next project would succeed. Even fewer understood the weight of loneliness that often accompanied his achievements. Friends and colleagues described him as brilliant but sometimes difficult to work with. His vision was so singular that it could alienate those who did not share his passion or pace. Yet, those closest to him also saw a deeply caring and driven individual who believed that his work could genuinely change the world for the better. By the time Elon launched SpaceX, Tesla, and SolarCity, the world had begun to see him as a force of nature, a man with the power to shape the future. But the emotional foundation beneath that image was far more fragile and complicated. It was a mix of childhood wounds, family loyalty, personal loss, and relentless hope. These forces collided in a way that made Elon both inspiring and unpredictable. As Elon unveiled his latest invention, these past experiences were the invisible threads guiding his decisions and responses. The scars and lessons of his youth were not just memories but active parts of his drive and resilience. What makes a man like Elon Musk push forward when so much is against him? What keeps him dreaming when so many would give up? The answers lie in the tangled history of a boy who refused to be broken by his circumstances and a man who believes the future can always be better than the present. This backstory is not just about the man behind the invention, it is about the human spirit that fuels every breakthrough. Every setback Elon faced, every tough decision he made, prepared him for this moment, the moment when he would reveal something that could reshape humanity's destiny. The relationships that shaped him, from his parents to his partners and friends, created a web of support and conflict that added layers of complexity to his character. Love, betrayal, and sacrifice, these themes are woven through his life story just as they will be woven through the journey of his latest invention. So as we move forward into the rising conflict and challenges ahead, keep in mind that behind every headline and breakthrough is a person with a past, with emotions, fears, and hopes. Elon Musk's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the enduring human quest for meaning and progress. It is a story many of us can relate to in one way or another, because at its core, it's about facing adversity and choosing to move forward anyway. What's one memory or experience from your past that keeps pushing you forward? As Elon's journey continues, so too does the journey of anyone who dares to dream and fight for a better future. The weight of expectations the world was watching. After years of rumors, speculation, and a string of high-profile successes, Elon Musk's newest invention had everyone holding their breath. Expectations were sky-high, and the pressure was almost suffocating. Elon himself knew this better than anyone else. His life had become a whirlwind of announcements, deadlines, and demands that left little room for error. Behind the scenes, the reality was far more complicated than the polished public image suggested. Within Musk's inner circle, tension simmered. His closest advisors and engineers were working around the clock, driven by an unrelenting deadline to perfect the technology before the official launch. Some whispered doubts, wondering if the invention could truly live up to the hype. Others feared leaks or sabotage that could derail everything they had built. Elon, for all his genius, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. His sleep was fragmented by nightmares of failure and public humiliation. Friends worried about his health, critics questioned whether he had bitten off more than he could chew. The stakes were enormous, not just for Musk but for the planet. If the invention worked, it could revolutionize energy production and combat climate change. If it failed, it could destroy Musk's reputation and set back progress by years. The media frenzy only added fuel to the fire. Headlines alternated between breathless excitement and harsh skepticism. Some industry leaders dismissed the project as a publicity stunt, while others openly doubted the technical feasibility. Investors jittered nervously, demanding results but unwilling to trust the process. Even among Musk's own companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, the atmosphere was tense. Employees worked long hours, some fueled by excitement, others driven by fear of being part of a failure. Rumors spread of disagreements within teams, creative clashes between engineers, and whispered warnings that not everyone was fully on board with the direction Elon was taking. Elon's personal life began to unravel under the strain. His romantic relationship, already fragile, was strained by the constant focus on work. Friends saw less and less of him, and social invitations went unanswered. The isolation that had marked his youth seemed to be creeping back into his adult life. It was a lonely place to be, surrounded by people yet feeling completely alone in the fight. Then came the leaks. Just weeks before the scheduled reveal, fragments of information about the invention appeared on social media and in anonymous posts online. The leaks sparked a firestorm of speculation and conspiracy theories. Some claimed the technology was a hoax, others warned of dangerous side effects. Elon's team scrambled to contain the damage, launching investigations and tightening security. But the leaks had already planted seeds of doubt. Internally, tensions rose as accusations flew. Who was responsible? Was someone trying to sabotage the project? Trust began to fray between Elon and his closest allies. Meetings grew heated, and alliances shifted. Elon found himself questioning not just others but also his own judgment. Was he pushing too hard? Was the invention really ready? Moments of hope flickered when the team pulled together to overcome obstacles, but just as quickly, new crises emerged. One engineer discovered a flaw in the system that required weeks of additional work to fix. Another key investor threatened to pull out unless reassurances were made. The media caught wind of the internal struggles, amplifying the narrative of a project on the brink of collapse. Despite the chaos, Elon refused to back down. He doubled down on his vision, rallying his team with passionate speeches about the importance of the invention for humanity's future. "This is bigger than any of us," he told them. "We're not just building a device, we're building hope." Yet even with his determination, cracks appeared. In private moments, Elon's confidence wavered. He felt the crushing burden of expectations, the fear of letting down millions who had pinned their hopes on him. It was a familiar feeling. One that took him back to the bullied child in South Africa, the young immigrant in Canada struggling to prove himself. Now, with the world watching, that feeling was magnified 1,000-fold. The rising conflict wasn't just external, it was deeply personal. Elon wrestled with self-doubt, battling the pressure to be perfect and the reality of human imperfection. Friends who tried to reach him found a man caught in a storm, desperate to hold everything together. But Elon's story is never one of surrender. Just when the pressure seemed unbearable, moments of unexpected hope emerged. A trusted friend in the engineering team proposed a new approach to solving the technical glitch, offering a lifeline just when it seemed lost. Family members reached out with words of encouragement, reminding Elon of what really mattered. These flashes of hope rekindled his fighting spirit, pushing him through sleepless nights and endless challenges. Yet the rising conflict was far from over. As the launch date approached, the invention faced one final, daunting test. A public demonstration that could either cement its place in history or shatter it forever. Elon prepared himself for what might be the most important moment of his life. The tension was electric, the stakes higher than ever. Would the world believe in his vision? Would his invention deliver on its promise? And most importantly, would Elon Musk emerge from this crucible stronger, or broken? The answers were just around the corner, but the journey there was a battlefield of emotions, alliances, and relentless pressure. This is the story of a man who refused to give up, even when the weight of the world threatened to crush him. As you watch this story unfold, think about the moments in your own life when everything seemed impossible. What kept you going? What gave you hope when all seemed lost? Elon's journey is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, a spark of hope can light the way forward. Stay with me. The next chapter takes us to the climactic journey where the invention is finally revealed, and everything changes. The revelation and its consequences. The day of the big reveal arrived like a storm gathering on the horizon, unseen yet undeniable. Silicon Valley's largest auditorium was packed with the world's most influential figures, scientists, investors, journalists, and curious onlookers who had followed Elon Musk's every move for years. Cameras flashed and whispers rippled through the crowd as the anticipation built to a fever pitch. Elon stood backstage, calm on the surface but inside a whirlwind of nerves and determination. He knew this moment could make or break everything he had worked so hard to build. As the lights dimmed and the spotlight hit the stage, Elon stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He opened with a question: what if one device could end humanity's reliance on fossil fuels forever? What if it could provide clean, unlimited energy to every corner of the planet? The audience leaned in. Elon revealed the invention, a sleek, compact device no larger than a briefcase, emitting a gentle blue glow. He called it Helios. This wasn't just another battery or solar panel. Helios was a breakthrough in quantum energy conversion, capable of harnessing energy from ambient quantum fields, an untapped source of power that scientists had only theorized about. The explanation was dense and technical, but Elon's passion made it clear: Helios could transform energy production by making it clean, affordable, and limitless. The crowd erupted in applause, but the moment was far from simple celebration. The technology was so advanced that many struggled to fully grasp its implications. Skepticism lingered even among the experts. Elon invited a live demonstration. On stage, Helios powered a small city block off the grid, illuminating buildings and powering vehicles in real time. The effect was electrifying, literally and figuratively. Cameras captured the glowing streets, the astonished faces, the gasps of the crowd. But as the demo concluded, murmurs spread about the long-term stability and safety of Helios. Elon acknowledged these concerns openly, emphasizing that this was just the beginning and that rigorous testing and deployment would follow. Yet, the unveiling was a seismic event. Governments, corporations, and activists alike scrambled to respond. Some hailed Helios as the dawn of a new era, others warned of economic disruption and geopolitical instability. The ripple effects were immediate. Stock markets fluctuated wildly, with energy companies' shares plummeting as renewable stocks surged. Elon's own companies experienced renewed attention and scrutiny, balancing newfound optimism with pressure to deliver. Behind the scenes, Elon faced a new battle, navigating political hurdles, regulatory red tape, and intense lobbying from entrenched interests threatened by Helios. Alliances formed and fractured as the stakes rose beyond science and technology to the very fabric of global power. At home, Elon's personal life reflected the chaos unfolding in the world. Relationships strained under the spotlight, and old wounds reopened. Yet through it all, he remained driven by a singular vision: to change the world for the better. He traveled relentlessly, meeting with leaders, negotiating partnerships, and defending Helios against critics and skeptics. Each encounter tested his resolve, but also deepened his understanding of the enormous responsibility he now carried. Meanwhile, the team behind Helios worked tirelessly to refine and scale the technology. Setbacks and breakthroughs came in rapid succession, often within the same day. The pressure was immense, and the stakes grew higher with every successful demonstration. The invention was no longer just a scientific marvel, it was a symbol of hope and a lightning rod for conflict. The emotional toll on Elon and his team was profound. They were pioneers on a precarious frontier, balancing exhilaration with exhaustion, hope with doubt. Elon's childhood lessons, perseverance amid hardship, the necessity of sacrifice, echoed louder than ever. Yet even as Helios seemed poised to reshape the planet's future, an unexpected crisis erupted. A sudden malfunction during a large-scale test sent shockwaves through the community. Power surges damaged equipment, and questions about the safety of quantum energy intensified. The media pounced on the story, fueling fears of a new energy disaster. Elon faced his darkest hour. Critics called for investigations, investors hesitated, and governments considered halting deployment. The fragile hope that Helios inspired trembled on the edge of collapse. But Elon refused to retreat. Drawing on his experience with SpaceX's failed rocket launches and Tesla's near bankruptcy, he confronted the crisis head-on. Transparency became his strategy, openly sharing data, inviting independent reviews, and mobilizing experts worldwide to address the issues. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. The team identified the cause, a rare quantum feedback loop that could be controlled with new safeguards. Improvements were made, and subsequent tests succeeded without incident. Helios's promise remained intact, stronger and more reliable than ever. This phase of the journey was more than technical. It was a crucible of leadership and character. Elon's ability to navigate disaster with honesty and resilience won new respect and forged deeper bonds with his team and supporters. The invention was no longer just a product, it was a movement. As global adoption of Helios expanded, the world began to change. Cities once choked by pollution cleared, energy costs plummeted, new industries emerged around quantum energy applications. Yet with progress came new challenges: displaced workers, geopolitical shifts, ethical debates about technology's role in society. Elon's vision extended beyond invention. He advocated for policies ensuring equitable access and sustainable growth. His journey had evolved from lone innovator to global statesman, balancing ambition with empathy. Throughout it all, the emotional core of the story remained Elon's unyielding hope. Hope that despite obstacles, humanity could choose a better path. Hope that even in moments of crisis, collaboration and courage could prevail. Hope that one person's dream could spark a revolution. This chapter of the story is a vivid tapestry of triumph and struggle, discovery and danger, innovation and humanity. It invites us to imagine a future transformed by bold ideas and relentless determination. As you follow Elon's journey, consider your own role in shaping the future. What risks are you willing to take? What hopes drive you forward? The next chapter will bring us to the emotional climax, where revelations and decisions force Elon and the world to confront profound truths and unexpected consequences. Stay tuned. Truths revealed and hearts tested. The world had changed overnight, but the true test for Elon Musk and his invention Helios was just beginning. After the initial excitement and the turbulent setbacks, a deeper, more personal challenge emerged, one that no amount of technology or genius could easily solve. It started quietly, with small whispers among the scientific community, then grew louder as investigative journalists dug deeper. Questions arose about the source of Helios's energy. The quantum fields it tapped into were theoretically limitless, but the practical consequences of extracting energy from such a fundamental layer of reality were not fully understood. Some feared Helios might disrupt natural processes or create unintended side effects that could ripple through ecosystems and even the fabric of spacetime itself. These concerns ignited a fierce debate that divided experts, policymakers, and the public. As the scrutiny intensified, Elon found himself at the center of a storm unlike any he had faced before. The invention that promised salvation was now accused of endangering the planet. More troubling was a confidential report leaked to the media, revealing that early tests had uncovered anomalies, unexplained energy fluctuations and minor but persistent disturbances in localized environments. The leak ignited panic and skepticism, prompting demands for a worldwide halt to Helios's deployment. Elon's team scrambled to respond, but the damage was done. Investors began pulling out, partners distanced themselves, and public opinion shifted from awe to fear. The emotional impact on Elon was profound. For the first time, he confronted the possibility that his vision might have unintended, irreversible consequences. It echoed the fears of his childhood, the burden of responsibility and the cost of dreaming too big. At a private moment, alone in his office overlooking the city, Elon grappled with his deepest doubts. Was he a visionary or a reckless dreamer? Was the price of progress too high? The weight of those questions threatened to crush him. Yet, even in his darkest hour, hope flickered. Elon's closest allies, friends, family, and loyal team members, reminded him why he started this journey, not for fame or fortune, but for a future where humanity thrived in harmony with the planet. Together, they resolved to confront the crisis transparently and urgently. Elon convened a global summit, inviting the world's leading scientists, ethicists, and leaders to discuss the risks and chart a path forward. The summit was a tense, emotional gathering. Some participants were skeptical, others hopeful, but all agreed on one thing: the need for careful stewardship and open dialogue. Elon spoke candidly, acknowledging mistakes and emphasizing the collective responsibility to ensure safety and sustainability. His honesty resonated, rekindling trust among many skeptics. Meanwhile, investigations into the anomalies continued. The team discovered that the energy fluctuations were linked to a delicate balance within the quantum fields, an intricate dance that required precise control to avoid disruption. With this insight, engineers developed new protocols and safety mechanisms that dramatically reduced risks. As the technology improved, a wave of cautious optimism spread. Pilot projects resumed under strict oversight, demonstrating Helios's potential without harmful side effects. The emotional climax was not just about science but about human resilience and accountability. Elon's journey mirrored a universal truth: innovation carries risks, but confronting those risks with courage and integrity can lead to profound growth. Through this process, Elon's character deepened. He became more than a brilliant inventor. He emerged as a leader who embraced vulnerability and the messy realities of change. His relationships reflected this transformation. Reconnecting with his estranged family brought unexpected healing. His romantic partnership, tested by years of strain, found new strength in shared purpose and understanding. Even his public image softened, as people saw the man behind the headlines, flawed, determined, and deeply human. At the same time, the world around Helios evolved. Communities once skeptical began to experience tangible benefits: clean air, stable energy, revitalized economies. Stories of hope and renewal emerged from places that had suffered from pollution and poverty. These stories were the true measure of Helios's impact, far beyond the technology itself. But the emotional climax also included bittersweet sacrifices. Some industries declined, jobs were lost, and geopolitical tensions flared as energy powers shifted. Elon grappled with these consequences, striving to balance progress with compassion. He championed retraining programs and international cooperation to ease the transition, but the road was uneven and fraught with challenges. In the final days of the summit, Elon delivered a speech that captured the essence of the emotional climax: "We stand at a crossroads where the choices we make will define our legacy." Helios is not just a machine, it's a symbol of what we can achieve when we dare to dream and face our fears. But with that power comes responsibility. We must act with humility, courage, and a commitment to the greater good. The room erupted in applause, a moment of collective hope and resolve. The emotional climax leaves us reflecting on the complexities of progress, the joy and pain, the light and shadow. It challenges us to consider our own role in the unfolding story of humanity. What truths have you faced that changed you? What sacrifices have shaped your journey? Elon's story is a reminder that even when the future seems uncertain, hope and integrity can guide us through. The next chapter will explore the resolution and reflection, where lessons learned lead to profound transformation and a new beginning, not just for Elon Musk, but for the world. The dust had finally begun to settle. The debates, the breakthroughs, the protests, the moments of wonder and panic, all of it had brought the world to a new and unfamiliar place. And at the heart of that transformation stood Elon Musk, no longer just a billionaire innovator or controversial icon, but a man forever altered by the journey he had led and endured. The story of Helios had become bigger than him, bigger than any one company or country. It was a new chapter in the history of civilization. Yet, in the quiet aftermath of global storms and personal reckonings, it was the small, intimate moments that defined what came next. Elon walked through one of the first Helios-powered villages. A small town in Kenya, once plagued by chronic blackouts and energy poverty. Children ran through fields now illuminated by streetlights that never flickered. Women who had once cooked over open fires now used clean, safe induction stoves powered by Helios. Local schools buzzed with students learning on tablets charged by energy pulled from thin air. It wasn't a utopia, but it was progress. Tangible, undeniable progress. Elon stood silently, observing. For once, he didn't speak. He didn't need to. The impact spoke for itself. These moments weren't about press releases or stock markets. They were about change that reached into the deepest corners of the world, into the lives of people whose names would never make headlines. But even amid this hope, Elon remained mindful. He had seen what unchecked ambition could do, how even the noblest vision could spiral into danger when not balanced with humility. That understanding was etched into every wrinkle around his eyes, into every quiet pause in conversation. Helios was now governed by a global coalition, an alliance of scientists, engineers, ethicists, and citizens who ensured the technology was used responsibly. Elon had insisted on this, knowing the dangers of centralized power. He had watched as oil giants crumbled and new energy leaders rose. He had seen friends become adversaries and strangers become allies. Most importantly, he had seen how quickly power could blind even the most well-meaning minds. And he would not let that happen again. Tesla and SpaceX continued to grow, but Musk delegated more than he ever had before. He shifted his focus from control to mentorship, investing in young innovators with bold dreams. He launched open-source initiatives, sharing parts of the Helios design so that grassroots communities could develop their own localized energy solutions. It was no longer about being the smartest man in the room. It was about being the one who listened the most, who learned, who guided. His role evolved from inventor to steward. Back in California, Elon reconnected with his children in ways he hadn't before. There were fewer missed birthdays, more quiet mornings over pancakes, more walks where the conversations weren't about Mars or propulsion systems, but about music, friendships, and fears. He apologized for the times he hadn't been there. He didn't try to justify the past. He simply tried to be present. His relationship with his ex-partners, once strained to the point of silence, grew into something resembling peace. Not everything was healed, but there was understanding, and sometimes, that was enough. The world, too, had begun its own reflection. Nations gathered in new assemblies, not just to regulate Helios but to rethink energy, sustainability, and shared responsibility. Countries once at odds now collaborated on energy-sharing networks, disaster relief powered by portable Helios generators, and economic development that didn't come at the planet's expense. It wasn't perfect, there were still conflicts, still greed, still inequality, but the needle had moved. The tone had changed. Possibility had replaced resignation. In schools, children learned not only about electricity and climate change but about the story of Helios, how an idea that seemed impossible had become real through courage, perseverance, and a willingness to adapt. They read about the trials Elon faced, the mistakes he made, the truths he had to confront. And in those lessons, they found not just inspiration, but warning: progress is fragile. It must be earned again and again, each day. As for Elon, he found himself drawn more to the edges of the world. Remote places. Silent landscapes. One evening, in a cabin nestled in the Rockies, he sat by a fire with one of his oldest friends, someone who had stood by him before the fame, before the companies, before the spotlight. "Do you ever regret it?" the friend asked. Elon looked into the flames for a long time. "Sometimes," he said honestly. "There were things I missed. People I hurt. There were moments I could have made different choices." He paused. "But I also think, we were meant to try. Not to be perfect. Just to try." They sat in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound. In that moment, there was no Helios, no press, no pressure, just two old friends reflecting on a life lived without turning away from the hard parts. Later that year, Elon published a memoir. It wasn't ghostwritten. It wasn't a marketing tool. It was raw, honest, and filled with admissions of fear, confusion, joy, and failure. In it, he didn't glorify Helios. Instead, he wrote about the people behind it, the young engineers who pulled all-nighters, the skeptics who made it stronger, the critics who forced hard conversations, and the millions of ordinary people whose lives were touched by a device that once only existed as a sketch on a napkin. The final sentence of the book read, "Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way." That line resonated with people in a way nothing else had. It captured what Helios had come to mean. Not just as a source of power, but as a symbol of love for humanity, for the planet, for future generations. That sentiment echoed in halls of government, in classrooms, in family conversations. The world had seen what was possible when someone dared to ask what if, and then had the courage to answer with action. Elon eventually stepped back from the public eye. Not out of defeat or exhaustion, but because the work had grown beyond him. Helios didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to everyone. That was the point. That was the gift. In his final public appearance before retirement, he stood before a group of high school students in Detroit, kids from struggling neighborhoods, many of whom had only recently gotten reliable electricity thanks to Helios community grids. He didn't talk about physics or coding. He talked about failure. About getting knocked down and standing up again. About being afraid, and trying anyway. "Your ideas matter," he said. "Even the ones that seem too big, too weird, too risky. Especially those ones. If I've learned anything, it's this: if you care enough, and you keep going, and you surround yourself with people who believe with you, even the impossible becomes possible." The students gave him a standing ovation. Not because he was Elon Musk, the icon. But because they saw in him something they recognized in themselves, a stubborn hope. A belief that they mattered. That they could shape the future, too. That was how the story of Helios ended, not with a single moment of triumph, but with a million quiet ones. Lights coming on in villages. Families cooking without smoke. Children reading after dark. Cities breathing easier. People dreaming bigger. And above all, a world learning to move forward, carefully, courageously, together. This was more than just the end of a story. It was the beginning of something new. Not a future handed down by the powerful, but built. Brick by brick, idea by idea, heart by heart, by everyone. The invention had changed the world. But the real change was in the people who chose to believe, to act, to love. And that is the truth at the core of everything. Technology may power the world, but only love can lead it. Forging ahead into the unknown, the roar of renewed hope echoed around the world as Helios moved from fragile prototype to unstoppable global force, but Elon Musk knew better than anyone that true progress doesn't unfold in straight lines. Triumph always carries its own shadow, and for Helios, the real test was only beginning. Days after the global summit, a new challenge emerged from an unlikely source, a small, independent research collective based in Norway called Aurora Labs. They had been tracking Helios installations and noticed subtle anomalies in long-term energy online flow. Nothing catastrophic, just irregularities that didn't show up in standard tests, but enough to hint at deeper systemic issues. Aurora Labs published a white paper detailing their findings, patterns of energy fluctuation that could indicate microinstabilities in quantum field interactions. Their paper urged thorough investigation before further rollout. The release sent ripples through the scientific community and the press. Headlines questioned whether Helios had been rushed into production, whether its promise overshadowed prudent caution. Governments that had embraced the technology hesitated to invest further until the concerns were addressed. Elon, ever the proactive leader, arranged a live, open forum with Aurora Labs, Helios engineers, independent scientists, regulators, and journalists in attendance. The event was broadcast worldwide. Emotions were high, some voices were worried, others defensive. Elon opened the forum not with technical jargon but with acknowledgement. "We hear you," he said, voice steady yet sincere. "Innovation demands trust. We won't move forward without ensuring safety and transparency." The exchange was tense, raw, and real, a public reckoning that blurred lines between spectacle and substance. Occasionally heated but driven by shared responsibility, not accusation. Aurora's lead researcher, Dr. Ingrid Dahl, spoke eloquently about the need for humility in the face of quantum mysteries. Elon listened, asked questions, and committed the resources of his labs and partners to independently validate the issue. That evening, back at a remote Helios facility, engineers pored over Aurora's data. They replicated tests, refined simulations, and hunted for clues. Exhaustion pressed on them, but also a sense of purpose. They were not just building a technology, they were safeguarding a legacy. Weeks passed. Many feared a relapse of the kind of setback Helios had faced at its debut. Musk addressed the world again: "We built Helios to empower humanity, not to harm it. We'll follow the data wherever it leads." Meanwhile, investors responded with caution, some pulled back, others stayed, watching closely. It was a moment of fragile stillness, public trust fragile and poised to break. Then, through long nights of shared determination, Aurora's data was confirmed, but interpreted differently. The fluctuations were real, but benign. More like background noise in quantum systems, akin to ocean swells rather than tsunami threats. The team developed new firmware updates and operational protocols to filter out these oscillations. Enhanced safety standards were established. Regulators, scientists, and even skeptical media acknowledged the effort as a triumph of scientific process. The story shifted from fear to collaboration, from doubt to diligence. In the months that followed, Helios installations resumed. This time with clearer communication, open monitoring data, and independent oversight. Communities implemented local review boards, citizen scientists contributed to monitoring efforts, and transparency became part of the mission. For Elon, this journey shaped him anew. He realized that leadership meant embracing vulnerability, not masking it. He also grasped that innovation on this scale required partnership with the global public, not unilateral decisions. As installations multiplied, On rooftops, mobile units, even ocean buoys, people shared stories of how Helios changed their daily lives. A mother in Brazil powered her child's oxygen concentrator without worry, a school in India gained electricity for evening classes, a wildlife sanctuary in Australia used the portable versions of Helios to monitor animals in remote habitats. These stories painted a mosaic of hope, a reminder that technology, when stewarded well, can nurture life rather than disrupt it. Yet new tension rose in unexpected ways. As Helios enabled energy independence, some governments and corporations resisted, threatening sanctions and trade restrictions. Lobbyists launched campaigns claiming the technology undermined traditional energy security and jobs. In the face of this pushback, Elon traveled to capitals and boardrooms. He didn't preach, he listened. He proposed transition programs for fossil fuel workers, retraining options, new economic plans. His messaging emphasized choice and partnership, not confrontation. Slowly, resistance softened. Trade negotiations included Helios-powered energy agreements. Legacy energy firms began converting infrastructure. Markets stabilized. Progress continued, but now built on discourse, not dominance. Through all this, Elon felt the personal strain anew. The spotlight had shifted to global politics, policy, and diplomacy, areas he had never sought but now had to navigate. He slept less, thought more, and leaned on the support of his inner circle, scientists, advisors, old friends. Retreating to a secluded coastal research center, he met with Aurora's team again. They shared laughter over past tensions, respect for the journey they'd taken together. Their collaboration was proof that genuine breakthroughs often require unlikely allies and open minds. In late autumn, Elon returned to that same auditorium in Silicon Valley where Helios had been unveiled. But this time, he wasn't alone. On stage were Aurora researchers, community leaders, strategic partners, and representatives from industries once skeptical. Together, they presented the next phase, Helios 2.0, an improved version with enhanced safeguards, open-source monitoring tools, and a global certification standard. The audience, watching on screens around the globe, erupted in applause. Elon spoke last. Helios isn't mine. It's ours, all of ours. And now we share it with the world, with trust, with transparency, and with love. The moment was electric, but calm beneath the energy, a collective triumph born of adversity and unity. We're reminded that breakthroughs aren't born only from flashes of genius, but from the grit to face problems head-on, the courage to include others, and the wisdom to lead with heart. This isn't the end. It's a turning point. And as we move forward, we carry a question: how will we steward our own innovations? What steps will we take when our successes threaten to outpace our care? Elon's journey offers one answer: when in doubt, lean into collaboration, accountability, and love. And always ask, what if? Betrayal and sacrifice. The world had begun to heal, with Helios installations glowing across continents and new energy initiatives springing to life everywhere. Yet, beneath the optimism lay an unsettling current. Elon Musk sensed it first in late-night emails from an anonymous address, warnings of covert manipulation, of someone deliberately engineering glitches in the Helios firmware to discredit the project. He resisted the impulse to dismiss it. He knew how high the stakes were and how desperate opposition could be. Soon, evidence emerged. Sophisticated sabotage, deeply embedded in Helios code, purposefully triggering subtle but dangerous energy surges in strategic locations. The consequences weren't abstract. In a small town in Spain, a temporary overload caused by manipulated firmware led to a transformer fire, thankfully contained but terrifying nonetheless. Panic rippled through media headlines: Helios hacked. Global energy nightmare. Elon faced it all, emotionally and ethically, alone at first. He convened his trusted leadership team, only to find whispers of suspicion. Was this sabotage from external adversaries, or from within? The ramifications were staggering. If internal, it meant betrayal from someone who had access to the highest echelons of Helios operation. If external, it meant global energy shutdowns, infrastructure collapses, even espionage. The betrayal felt deeply personal, an attack not only on the technology but on the hope he had fought for. His internal security chiefs conducted a covert digital forensics mission, tracing IP footprints and dissecting code histories. Meanwhile, Elon's emotions churned: anger, fear, disillusionment. One sleepless night, he confronted his second-in-command, Aisha Reynolds, the engineer he trusted most. She looked at him with strained calm. "I didn't do it, Elon," she said firmly, her voice cracking. "But I believe others did. This goes higher than we thought." Elon saw the pain in her eyes, the weight of betrayal. He hugged her. "I know. We trust each other. We'll fix this. We have to." As investigations deepened, a shocking truth emerged: the sabotage originated from a coalition of fossil fuel lobbyists and extremist groups who aimed to weaponize suspicion against Helios. They had bribed insiders, planted false leads, and caused the incident in Spain to spark global panic, all orchestrated to crash Helios and tarnish Elon's reputation. The betrayal cut to the core. Elon realized his cause had become a threat to powerful interests that refused to yield. The fight was no longer about clean energy, it was now about defending the future. In public, Elon played a cautious hand. He paused large-scale rollouts, reinforced infrastructure, and launched an international task force to combat energy technology sabotage. He didn't go on aggressive media blitzes. Instead, he emphasized collaboration. This isn't a competition between clean energy and fossil fuel. It's about the future of our planet. If we allow sabotage to define our actions, we play into fear and division. Backstage, though, he was furious, and weary. The betrayal had revealed how fragile trust could be and how easily hope could be twisted. In the midst of chaos, Elon made a decision that would change everything. He arranged a confidential summit with leaders from rival energy sectors, government officials, international regulators, and cybersecurity experts. The summit convened in Geneva under strict confidentiality. The pressure in that room was immense, not just because of stakes but because of personalities: bold leaders used to dominance, skeptical ministers cautious of sanctions, lobbyists who had fuel to defend. Elon walked in carrying a weight beyond physical fatigue. He carried the burden of protecting not only Helios but the ideal that innovation could be shared freely, not hoarded or crushed by fear. He began: "We are here not because we conquered clean energy. We're here because someone tried to break it. They weaponized doubt. Their aim was to fracture trust. But we're here to rebuild that trust, together." What followed were hours of tense negotiation. Elon proposed a groundbreaking framework: shared governance of Helios firmware, open auditing protocols, global cybersecurity standards, and a commitment from legacy energy firms to shift toward transitional strategies rather than outright obstruction. The idea was radical. It required former rivals to stand united against sabotage, to redefine competition as cooperation instead of conflict. Many resisted. Some ministers demanded guarantees, lobbyists sought concessions. Elon stood firm: "It's not just about business. It's about our survival. If sabotage succeeds, your assets lose value. If doubt wins, people choose darkness." In a turning moment, one unexpected ally emerged: the CEO of one of the world's largest oil conglomerates, Maria Torres. She stood, voice steady but soft: "Elon is right. What happened wasn't an accident. I lost employees in that fire in Spain. My company can't lose this fight. Our workers are yours, our communities are yours. We're in." That single act opened the door. One by one, other firms, nations, environmental groups, and cybersecurity teams pledged to collaborate. They created the Global Clean Energy Integrity Alliance, an unprecedented coalition tasked with governing Helios, defending it, and ensuring transparent deployment. The betrayal had forced unity. From the ashes of sabotage came a movement defined not just by energy but by integrity. Back at the summit's close, Elon looked out over the assembly and felt a surge of profound relief. In the face of betrayal, hope had endured. Unity had prevailed. Trust had been defended. But the cost wasn't just global, it was personal. Elon had placed his faith in people who could betray it. He had seen the ugliness of greed and desperation. The summit's success brought relief, but not closure. He knew the battle wasn't over, the alliance would need constant vigilance. As the participants left, Elon stayed behind with a few close staff, reviewing the manifesto they'd signed. His eyes fell on a photograph, an early Helios prototype held between his trembling hands back during those quiet early days. The smile on his younger face felt naive now. He stood, placed the photo on the table, and whispered, "We keep going, because we have to. Sacred duty. Shared responsibility. A vision bigger than any one person." Weeks later, Elon took the stage at the next Helios press conference. The world watched. Cameras rolled. He began with honesty, "We faced betrayal. We were targeted. But today, we're stronger, not because of technology, but because of unity. Today, we launch Helios Secure, a new standard of integrity, safety, and shared stewardship." The unveiling wasn't just about firmware. It was about a public commitment, that innovation would no longer operate in secret. That trust would be earned, renewed, defended. The applause was heartfelt. Tears of relief and pride mingled in many eyes. For Elon, the moment was transformative. The sacrifice of trust, the pain of betrayal, all had forged a new era. And as people walked away, watching Helios lights switch on again in shadows and cities, one thing became clear: progress doesn't just happen. It must be protected, respected, and nurtured, with love. Because hope, like energy, flows best when it's shared, and secured by belief. The rebirth of hope. The world had witnessed the fragility and power of innovation, but in the aftermath of betrayal and sabotage, something remarkable began to emerge: the rebirth of hope, not just for Helios, but for humanity's ability to unite in the face of adversity. As the Global Clean Energy Integrity Alliance took shape, efforts shifted from reactive defense to proactive growth. Elon Musk found himself at a crossroads. He could return to the familiar path of inventorpreneur, or embrace this new role as steward of a global movement. In the weeks that followed, Elon focused not on new prototypes, but on rebuilding trust at every level, community by community, nation by nation. He launched Helios Civic Labs, mobile units equipped with Helios tech and staffed by engineers, ethicists, and local leaders. The first lab traveled to a remote mountain village in Nepal, where erratic power had prevented schoolchildren from studying after dark. When the Helios Civic Lab arrived, it wasn't just because of clean energy, it symbolized a promise, that technology could belong to people, not corporations. As children cheered and scholars leapt forward to greet them, Elon watched the event streamed live. It hit him: the invention was no longer his. It belonged to the world. And that scared him more than any sabotage. He attended dinners and roundtable talks in locations as varied as Lagos, Sao Paulo, and Jakarta, listening to farmers, teachers, energy technicians, and students. He asked not how Helios could change their lives, but how they wanted it to change them. In a school courtyard in Nigeria, a teacher spoke of her students staying into the night to study. In a Brazilian fishing village, a mother described installing Helios panels on rooftops to power fresh water pumps. Each story became a blueprint for expansion, not a marketing opportunity. Elon realized his role had shifted: his job was to enable, to support, to step back. The alliance worked with multilateral agencies to design inclusive financing models, enabling low-income communities to access Helios. Microfinance programs, pay-as-you-go systems, co-op governance models, each adaptation reflected local cultures and needs. The technology spread in ways Elon had never anticipated. Rooftops, boats, clinics, even portable medicine refrigerators in Southeast Asia, Helios manifested in unexpected, beautiful forms. Skeptics acknowledged that this was more than an energy solution. It was a platform for social transformation. Elon's personal journey mirrored this shift. He declined invitations to speak at high-profile gala events, choosing instead to visit vulnerable regions in person. There, he stood in dusty clinics, in solar-lit classrooms, in refugee camps, wiping tears from his cheeks as he listened. He had come seeking applause and headlines, but what he found was connection. One evening, in a small village in northern Syria, a doctor told him that a Helios unit had kept ventilators running during a blackout, saving dozens of lives. Elon's response came unannounced. He hugged the woman, spoke in quiet thanks. It was the moment he felt most alive, not because he had invented something, but because he had made it available to someone who needed it. Back home, the Alliance launched Helios Education Initiative, partnering with universities and research institutes to train thousands of engineers, ethicists, cybersecurity experts, and field technicians. The goal wasn't just deployment, it was to build local expertise and capacity so that Helios would not fail when centralized aid ended. In Detroit, Manila, Accra, and Mumbai, graduates formed community co-ops that innovated their own Helios applications, crop drying sheds, refrigerated vaccine units, artisanal workshops. Each innovation, powered by communities, fueled momentum. The rebirth of hope lay in empowerment, not dependence. Elon continued to navigate treacherous waters. Opposition remained, particularly in nations threatened by sudden shifts in energy geopolitics. New regulatory challenges arose. But his approach had matured. He no longer sought to overpower opponents, but to include them. He offered joint research centers, fusion of legacy infrastructure, res-killing programs for fossil fuel workers. He brought competitors to the table and listened to their needs. In return, many agreed to share transformation instead of resisting it. The stands of power began to realign. At a UN Energy Summit, Elon addressed world leaders. He didn't promote Helios. He spoke of civic empowerment, environmental justice, human dignity. He closed with a message that defined this resolution: innovation is not measured in patents or profits, it is measured in the lives it lifts, the freedoms it grants, the futures it opens. Today, Helios is not Musk's. It's ours. And our mission is clear: to share, to teach, to protect, and to never let hope fade. The audience rose in standing ovation that echoed far beyond the chamber. The rebirth was collective. We see Elon in reflection, writing in a secluded library overlooking a quiet bay. He pens a letter to future innovators: build bravely. Lead honestly. Listen always. And love fiercely. Because your greatest power is not in what you create, but in what your creation allows others to become. He pauses, looks out over the water, then smiles, because he's done something far greater than invention. He's helped ignite a movement. And in doing so, rediscovered his own humanity. The story of Helios continues. But so does another story, a story of every person who dared to hope in the face of disruption. And in that shared narrative, we find the true meaning of innovation, that it's not just about changing the world, it's about inviting the world to change, together. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The sun had just begun its climb over Europe's largest Helios-powered microgrid, the grandest experiment in decentralized energy the world had ever seen. Thousands of units stretched across rolling fields near Munich, feeding into vineyards, factories, homes, and schools, all humming with the quiet certainty of clean power. The event was meant to mark a new era, a model for global expansion, a proof that Helios's promise was for everyone. Elon Musk felt exhilaration, but also an undercurrent of tension. For all the success, he knew the deeper test lay ahead: would this system hold when real responsibilities were placed upon it? He stepped onto the temporary stage erected in a central plaza, flanked by community leaders, engineers, and local farmers. A sea of faces gazed at him with hope, pride, and expectation. Cameras rolled, live streams beamed to millions. Elon took a deep breath before he spoke. Today, we're not just powering buildings, he began. We're powering people. We're powering dreams. And like any dream, it requires courage to sustain, and humility to improve. As applause rippled through the crowd, a sudden alert blinked on his communicator, an urgent notification about a localized grid fluctuation, priority alarm. For a moment, the promise of celebration warped into dread. His heart clenched. This was the moment of true reckoning. Elon excused himself and stepped backstage, where monitors showed readings from multiple grid nodes. One unit, serving several schools, had dropped below critical threshold, children's lights flickered, machines paused, alarms beeped. Panic set in as he watched technicians scramble. Elon raced to the control tent and demanded full transparency. Was this sabotage? A software bug? Or, worst of all, heroic failure? They had no immediate answers. He moved among the clusters of cables and screens, reboots happening in real time. He could feel the tension building around him, all eyes on him. All expectations held in abeyance. Minutes felt like hours as the team narrowed the cause, a miscalibrated firmware update on a high-altitude drone relay tower feeding power to the grid. The tower had failed to transition power smoothly during a midday surge. A simple enough bug, except a single drone was also the primary comms hub for the cluster. Without communication, the balancing algorithms couldn't compensate, and the ripple quickly cascaded. Elon's breath caught. Even in this world of distributed power, dependencies remained. And perfection was still elusive. Exhausted engineers worked furiously, patching the firmware live. Elon made a split-second decision. He authorized a manual override that rerouted power via an older mesh system drone, one normally kept as backup but never tested at scale. The risk: power could overload the mesh system, causing shutdowns across multiple clusters. Failure would mean mass blackouts, loss of trust, and possibly lives affected. He chose to act. The mesh drones hummed, power rerouted, cluster systems reconnected, and gradually, power returned. Schools lit again. Alarms went silent. Relief washed over the teams. Elon exhaled. Back on stage, he resumed his address. Today we learned that even the best systems can fail. But we also learned that when trust runs deep, when communities own the moment, when teams act with bravery, the system endures. This is your victory. The applause was thunderous. Emotion surged in Elon as the moment sank in. He wasn't perfect, the technology wasn't bulletproof, but together they had responded with humanity. That answer was more meaningful than any flawless demo. The rest of the day felt electric. Farmers waved solar irrigation systems, teachers spoke of longer school hours, entrepreneurs described new ventures buzzed to life overnight. At sunset, Elon stepped off stage and into the crowd, hugging families, meeting children who called him Uncle Elon, shaking hands with engineers who had worked through the night. There was laughter, tears, chatter, selfies, and a collective sense of shared purpose. The week afterward brought even deeper affirmation. Independent technicians visited each installation, confirming stability and recommending further improvements. Local energy councils posted transparent reports online. Media outlets billed Munich as the birthplace of the new energy commons, a model for global transition. Elon watched it unfold from a quiet bench in the plaza, the gold and pink sky above the vineyard rose. He pulled out his notebook and began writing. Redemption does not come from perfection. It comes from response, from how we act when things fall apart. That night, he reconnected with his oldest mentor, a retired NASA engineer who'd been among the first to invest in Helios. They spoke long into the quiet night about mistakes, visions, regret, and hope. The mentor told him, "You built more than an invention, Elon. You built a society's ability to surprise itself with its own kindness." Elon sat with that thought. Forged through failure and unity, he realized how fragile, beautiful, and possible this moment was. By the time he returned to the US, Helios's Munich model became a blueprint for global rollout, each replication rooted in local involvement, transparency, accountability, and a bold embrace of messiness. Elon shifted his own role, from global overseer to advisory mentor, encouraging local leaders to adapt, improve, and lead on their own terms. In boardrooms and town halls, he repeated the message: innovation must learn to fail well. The real test of a system is not its launch, but how it behaves under pressure. Over time, that sentence became an energy maxim, the Munich principle of resilient innovation. In the aftermath of the Munich microgrid success, Elon Musk found himself at a crossroads that no technical breakthrough could solve. The world had witnessed Helios in action, communities empowered, innovation rooted in transparency, but for Elon, the deeper challenge lay within. He had to reconcile the visionary ambition that drove him with the need for personal balance, reflection, and genuine fulfillment beyond global responsibility. The days passed in a rhythm of boardroom meetings, global summits, site visits, but every evening, Elon retreated to his private study, a high-ceilinged room on his estate overlooking Sonoma vineyards. There, amidst walls of books and models of rockets and cars, he confronted something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: exhaustion. Not just physical fatigue, but emotional burnout. He found himself rereading passages in his memoir where he'd written, "We write stories not just with words but with lives." Now, he asked himself, whose life was he writing, if not his own? One evening, his younger self, the kid who sold a video game for $500, haunted him. He remembered his mother's smile, warm and encouraging. He recalled late-night conversations with his brother Kimball about changing the world through technology and food. He saw in his notebook the sketches of a reused rocket, and a 300-page thesis drawing on what felt like infinite promise. But the present day felt crowded with responsibilities that stretched him thin, leaving him little room for genuine connection or wonder. He decided on a break. Not a public retreat, not a media-managed getaway, but a real departure from the stage. He boarded a private jet with only one travel partner, Tosca, his sister. They flew to a remote island off the coast of British Columbia, no press, no staff, just cold ocean winds, tall trees, and the promise of silence. The first days were awkward. Elon sat quietly on a dock, lines creasing his forehead as he watched fog roll over the water. The kind of silence he craved felt heavy, uncertain. He realized he hadn't practiced solitude in ages. Tosca didn't press him. They shared tea by a fire, hiking on rocky beaches, cooking meals together from local seafood. They spoke of their childhood, the tension in South Africa, the escape to Canada, the mix of hope and fear in every early step of Elon's career. In those conversations, Elon found relief. The weight of Helios, of pressure, of global scrutiny, those burdens could wait. He spoke candidly about his regrets, the dinners he missed with his children, the apologies he had yet to make to those who mattered most, the restless nights spent wondering if he was losing himself. Tosca listened and reminded him, "You didn't lose yourself because you changed the world. But you deserve to find yourself again." Those words lodged in his mind like seeds awaiting rain. When he returned home, Elon arrived not with new prototypes but with commitments, decisions not for a board or a world, but for himself. He vowed to take monthly retreats, to stop speaking for a few days at a time, to give himself permission to disconnect. He announced plans for family holidays, weekly dinners with his children, and regular check-ins with old friends. He said nothing publicly about burnout or rest. He didn't need to show strength. Instead, he showed humility, his actions speaking louder than any press release. At the next Helios board meeting, Elon surprised many by presenting a restructured leadership plan. He would transition to a chair and counselor role, supporting a new CEO with roots in community development and ethical science. He said, "I built the vision. Now I want those closer to the ground to own it." The board was silent for a moment before nodding in collective understanding. The decision marked a watershed, a founder stepping back not out of defeat but maturity. Friends observed the change. One engineer said, "Elon seems peaceful, focused, but not frantic. It's like he finally turned his genius inward." His children responded warmly, fewer missed events, more moments they could share in person. His former partners expressed cautious relief. Their relationship with him, while complex, began to soften. The public noticed too. Elon's public appearances grew fewer, but more resonant. Instead of grandiose tech demos, he now appeared at community forums, ethical AI symposiums, and small local panels on sustainable innovation. His message shifted subtly: progress is collective, but stewardship is personal. The media, once obsessed with his every tweet, noted the quieter, more reflective tone, a leader evolving beyond headlines. Behind the scenes, Helios continued to spread. Community co-ops launched projects testing regenerative farming powered by microgrids, refugee camps gained stable lighting and water purification, schools expanded curricula with tech workshops. These weren't dictated from the top, they were imagined by locals empowered to dream. Elon watched updates in newsletters and quietly smiled. They were building more than he ever intended. One evening, during a dinner in Silicon Valley, an old mentor approached him. She remarked, "Your journey with Helios is amazing, but your journey to yourself, that's the real breakthrough." Elon nodded, gratitude soft in his eyes. He realized she was right. Reinvention wasn't reserved for tech, it was personal too. As summer arrived, Elon joined his children and sister on a camping trip to Yellowstone. No journalists, no rockets, no announcements, just campfires, hikes, laughter. He felt sunlight on his face, free of schedule, free of expectation. He didn't think of Helios or space. He thought of stories, his family's story and the stories yet unwritten by his children. In a quiet dusk moment by a lake, one of his kids asked, "Dad, what's next for you?" Elon smiled, watching the water ripple. "What's next is me living fully. And whatever new chapters come, from Helios or beyond, we'll write them from here." His child smiled back, and in that reply, Elon saw the truth: the greatest invention was not technology, but balance. Elon sitting by a crackling campfire, telling stories and laughing deep into the night. The world watched his inventions power homes and nations, but here, under the stars, Musk discovered a deeper power, the power to slow down, to belong, to rest, and to love. Helios didn't unfold in boardrooms, auditoriums, or labs, it unfolded in the hearts of communities around the world. As Elon Musk concentrated on personal balance and stewardship, the global Helios movement gained a life of its own, driven by innovators, activists, and everyday people who saw the promise of energy freedom and took it into their own hands. In the dusty square of Otavalo, Ecuador, a group of farmers gathered under the shade of a century-old tree beside their newly installed Helios cell tower and solar panels. They weren't engineers, they were potatoes, corn, and quinoa growers who once relied on erratic grid power. Now, they spoke passionately about how Helios enabled cold storage, irrigation timing, and even online market access. They had formed a farmers' collective consortium to manage usage, maintenance, and profits. "This is ours," one leader said with pride. "We no longer wait for someone else to switch on the lights." Meanwhile, in southeastern Utah, a Native American tribe reclaimed land and built a microgrid array of Helios panels and small wind turbines. They trained young members as technicians, integrated renewables into water purification systems, and started a business selling excess power to a nearby town. The tribe's council stood together, edges softened by age and wisdom, declaring sovereignty not through politics but through self-reliance and respect for the land. Elon watched these stories quietly through monthly reports and video calls, resisting the urge to lead, to claim credit. Instead, he celebrated from afar, feeling a profound sense of purpose, even as he stepped back. In Manila, classrooms once plunged into darkness power up after dusk, enabling students to code, study languages, and connect globally. Teacher-led Helios clubs spring up, where kids learn basic programming and renewable science, sometimes with mentoring from local engineers who were once volunteers deployed during the rollout. They presented their prototypes, mobile app chargers, drone-mounted service bots, at regional tech fairs, winning awards and igniting new passions. In Cairo, entrepreneurs retrofitted old buildings with Helios-enhanced facades, integrating greenery, passive cooling systems, and power-optimizing sensors. The result, lower energy bills, improved air quality, community workshops on sustainability that brought teenagers, engineers, and elders together in conversations that echoed through narrow streets. In each of these places, Helios had become more than a system, it had become a platform for civic innovation. Communities had claims on their own energy futures, and they used it to improve health, education, food security, art, environment. Elon's company pivoted from central deployment to support, training, resource sharing, and open-source licensing. He backed Helios grants, funding local ideas, not telling people what to build, but listening and enabling. Soon, Helios Civic Labs became known as incubators, not just for technology, but for social enterprise. The movement even inspired grander collaborations, the Global Solidarity Microgrid Network, which connected co-op leaders from around the world. They shared blueprints, currencies, financing tricks, disaster response systems, and even success stories. When hurricanes battered the Caribbean, Helios units provided immediate power for water purification and cell towers. When droughts hit East Africa, solar-powered irrigation systems prevented famine in near-dry villages. Through video calls, community leaders exchanged lessons daily. We used your caching algorithm for storage. We cloned your firmware update for smart grid synchrony. We applied microloan system Gilberto's village built. The movement had transcended frontier technology, it had become a living ecosystem of stories, relationships, and collective identity. And while the world had watched Elon's invention unfold, the deeper story was now the people who claimed that invention as their own. Alongside growing global adoption, challenges emerged. Not all communities had equitable access, isolated islands lacked supply chains, conflict zones faced blockades, legal hurdles in some regions delayed deployment. Awareness of these gaps brought fresh urgency to the alliance. Elon, in his new advisory role, championed targeted funds and partnerships. Foundations, NGOs, governments, and corporations committed to supply rail corridors, refugee resilience grids, rural electrification plans across continents. The aim wasn't just technology distribution, it was justice. In the months that followed, teams fanned out to underserved areas, installing mobile, refugee relief pods, in camps in Jordan and Bangladesh. These units ran medical clinics, mobile schooling units, and Wi-Fi hubs powered by Helios kits. They connected thousands to vital services, night after night. The initiative soon inspired other global humanitarian agencies to include energy infrastructure as part of relief packages. In parallel, the movement nurtured local leadership. Training academies sprouted, in Brazil's Amazon, in India's Sundarbans, in Canada's North. These academies spanned a spectrum: technical engineering, governance, finance, environmental protection. Graduates returned to their communities as mentors, installers, trainers, entrepreneurs. With each cohort, Helios's impact rippled wider and deeper. Elon kept a personal ledger of these stories, retitled The Book of Hope. But he stopped using it for speeches, he used it for perspective, reminders that innovation, when trusted, belonged to everyone. He said to his leadership team, "Find the next leader, not the next product." At global forums, he echoed that sentiment: "I invented Helios, but communities energized it. That's our true invention, trust in people." The tone had shifted. He was no longer just a technological icon, he was now the co-founder of a global purpose. Yet he believed the work had only begun. To solidify gains, the alliance launched Helios Charter agreements, documents co-signed by community councils, technical advisors, and civic groups. The charter committed signatories to principles: transparency, inclusivity, education, environmental respect. It also outlined communal ownership of energy data. Communities tracked performance, shared updates, held public briefings. These commitments built trust from the ground up and protected against authoritarian seizures, corporate monopolies, or privatization. The charter became a model for new social contracts around technology. The movement is no longer Elon's alone, it is a global chorus, powered by individuals rediscovering agency and energized by collective purpose. Across forests, deserts, megacities, farmsteads, refugee camps, the hum of Helios lights up more than houses, it illuminates possibility. And in every beam stands a testament: innovation may begin with one mind, but it flourishes in many hands. Overcoming new challenges across the globe, Helios had sparked transformation, yet as its impact deepened, fresh challenges emerged that threatened to stall its promise. Elon, now serving in an advisory role, watched as local community leaders, engineers, and governments grappled with complexities he hadn't fully anticipated. This chapter explores how the movement addressed those growing pains and turned them into further growth. In coastal Bangladesh, for instance, Helios microgrids had brought reliable power to flood-prone villages. But rising sea levels and salty air caused corrosion in equipment, forcing teams to adapt designs and develop corrosion-resistant casings. Local women technicians created inventive protective coatings from recycled plastics, while community councils petitioned for stronger infrastructure funding. The result wasn't just a technical fix, it was the birth of a local manufacturing cooperative that produced inexpensive, sustainable upgrades for Helios units. Their efforts won regional awards and inspired other communities facing climate challenges. In Eastern Europe, Helios installations in post-industrial towns brought light to abandoned factories and empty storefronts. But economic inequality sparked tension: energy-rich neighborhoods could afford upgrades. Poorer areas lagged behind. Community leaders formed cross-neighborhood partnerships, pooling microgrid capacity and creating shared energy credits. Elon urged the alliance to provide matching grants to bridge gaps, but he insisted that local councils manage fund allocation, ensuring decisions reflected community priorities. Through forums and workshops held in converted factory lofts, residents devised participatory budgeting systems, reinforcing trust and shared ownership. Meanwhile, in Arctic Canada, remote indigenous communities gained lighting and power using Helios. But dependency on foreign-made drones and batteries raised fears of over-reliance. The communities responded by blending traditional knowledge with clean tech. Elders helped map wind corridors, youth programs prototyped hybrid solar-wind prototypes with wooden structures inspired by ancestral canoes. In every case, Helios adapted to context, not vice versa. Elon reflected on this deeply decentralized ripple, realizing Helios could never succeed as a one-size-fits-all solution. At the same time, aging fossil fuel infrastructure posed challenges worldwide. In Nigeria, an enterprising team converted an old oil drilling rig into a Helios-powered hydrogen production hub. They used excess daytime energy to split water into hydrogen, storing it for night use and transportation fuel. The project bridged old and new energy systems, employed former oil workers, and paved the way for hydrogen-powered buses in Lagos. It exemplified how disruptive technology could coexist with existing systems, if guided by inclusive planning. Yet not all stories were so smooth. In a Southeast Asian megacity, sloppy installation practices led to power surges that damaged appliances. Public support faltered until local inspectors stepped in. They retrained installers, replaced faulty units, and held public energy safety days. Turnout was massive. Neighbors swapped stories, learned electricity basics, and renewed trust in Helios's promise. Elon watched the news feed and realized this was the turning point. Challenges weren't failures, they were invitations for deeper engagement. In Australia, wildfire seasons tested Helios's resilience. When fires threatened rural towns, mobile Helios units and drones provided emergency power for shelters, pumps, and communications. But smoke-choked sensors and overheated panels forced innovation. Local engineers designed detachable shades and particulate-resistant filters, solutions born from crisis, evolving the system. Filmmakers documented the process, transforming a rural disaster into a story of collective ingenuity and resilience. Through every test, the alliance deepened. Teams from different continents, engineers, farmers, tribal leaders, urban planners, connected via virtual forums. They swapped blueprints, debating solar-wind mix ratios, coding new firmware features, and exploring local regulatory landscapes. Elon maintained his Book of Hope, updating it with each story. Knowing the real invention wasn't the device, but the global web of empathy, problem-solving, and local intelligence it enabled. Back in headquarters, younger teams reassessed their roles. They transitioned from tech enforcers to support facilitators, designing educational toolkits in multiple languages, launching helpline centers, and partnering with NGOs for capacity building. They created challenge grants, enabling communities to apply for funding by presenting local solutions, drought resiliency in Kenya, solar-powered fish farms in Chile, AI-driven grid management in Poland. Each funded project brought new layers of adaptability. Elon, in his advisory capacity, traveled less often but spoke more wisely. He praised local leaders in global speeches, spotlighting their projects in international media, and mentored representatives from dozens of regions. He began writing regular letters to the network, blog-style updates filled with lessons learned, gratitude, and occasional requests: share a design hack, tell me what failed, show me your community. The tone was collaborative, visionary humility in motion. Still, pressure mounted. Climate pressures intensified, and global energy demand surged. Resource gaps, like rare earth minerals for equipment, became visible. Elon and the Alliance proposed a circular economy plan, recycling programs for decommissioned units, standardized modular parts, and partnerships for local manufacturing to reduce shipping footprints. Suppliers adapted, investors responded, but execution required perseverance and coordination. Yet amid complexity, hope grew more resilient. Hubs in every region became innovation centers sharing peer-to-peer training, supply chain optimization, and voices at global climate talks. The Alliance's annual gathering, held this year in Nairobi, broke attendance records. Community delegates, engineers, villagers, youth activists, elders, and bureaucrats filled stadiums. They shared stories of transformed lives and challenged each other to think differently about progress. Elon appeared via live stream, a humble, older man whose presence still carried warmth. He said, "We have learned that success is not avoiding problems, but inviting solutions. We have seen how communities can rise stronger when technology meets empathy." The delegation burst into applause not for him, but for themselves. Helios stands not only as a product but as a global ecosystem, one that learns, adapts, includes, and endures. And Elon, having shifted from inventor to mentor, understands this truth. That technology must be in service to humanity's capacity to care, connect, and create together. The narrative of Helios had traveled far beyond invention. It had become a living testament to the power of community, resilience, and shared purpose. Yet, for Elon Musk, the deeper odyssey was still unfolding, a journey not charted on maps but mapped within, exploring the intersection of ambition and humility, legacy and renewal. In the months after Nairobi's historic Alliance Summit, Elon received an invitation that stirred something unexpected. An ecological research institute in Greenland invited him to witness the impact of Helios prototypes powering remote scientific stations amid melting ice caps. It was a long way from boardrooms and auditoriums. This journey felt personal, an opportunity to reconnect not with his invention, but with the purpose behind it. He arrived in Greenland during the brief period of summer light, traveling by icebreaker ship and snowmobile to a lab perched on a steel frame above permafrost. The scientists there relied on backup generators, noisy, polluting diesel machines that ironically threatened the very ice they studied. Helios prototypes had been deployed months earlier, but data from the field logs told the important story: emissions were cut dramatically, experiments ran uninterrupted, researchers reported health improvements and deeper focus. Yet the isolation of the place weighed heavily, the team was small, the environment harsh, the margins slim. In a quiet evening gathering around a screened window looking out over twin icebergs, Elon asked one scientist, Dr. Nils Johansson, what surprised you most about using Helios up here? Nils paused before answering, it's not the reliability, it's the dignity. We feel like partners with this technology, not passengers. We're trusted to care for it, and in doing so, we care more for each other and this place. The words resonated deeply. Dignity, a word Elon hadn't applied to his work before, yet it spoke to the evolving heartbeat of Helios, respect for people and places. Upon returning to California, Elon spent days reflecting. In the cavernous conference room at his advisor's office, he said to his team, "We've built a system that powers lives, but we still need to power dignity, connection, and accountability." He proposed a new initiative, Helios Values Field. The concept was twofold: to embed cultural and ecological education into each deployment and to invite anthropologists, ethicists, and local youth into the design process alongside engineers. Technology would no longer enter communities as a tool but as a dialogue. The team embraced the shift. They revised deployment protocols, now including week-long values workshops preparatory to installations, sessions filled with storytelling, sharing, and mapping community hopes and concerns. In Oaxaca, Mexico, workshops were held under brightly colored papel picado; in Norway, in cabins warmed by peat stoves; in rural China, in courtyard homes with elders recounting ancestral land stories. In every place, engineers learned local priorities: solar lanterns for midnight fishing chants, grid-powered weaving looms, mobile phone charging hubs near community wells. The transformation moved beyond power and into culture and identity. Elon observed a Panasonic-like pivot from behind the scenes. He saw a Helios technician stop midpoint in coding, sit down with elders, and listen. He saw a Fulbright scholar guide a design sprint. He listened to a dozen languages weave into new firmware updates and hardware tweaks. And he realized that the edges of technology were defined by people, not patents. Yet old challenges returned. In the Arctic, permafrost thaw caused shifting foundations for installations. In South America, inflation and import costs delayed shipments. In Greece, wildfire regulations required constant mesh network adjustments. Each geographic contrast revealed that Helios must adapt endlessly, and respectfully. Elon responded with investment in Helios Adapt Labs, mobile units that could prototype regional customization, from modular power kits to biodegradable panel coatings to urban art-powered charging benches. These labs became cross-disciplinary workshops and incubators for social tech innovation. They held festivals, public brainstorms, and invited outsiders, musicians, philosophers, activists, to spark imagination. One such festival in Bogotá sparked a collaboration between street artists, climate scientists, and Helios engineers who created interactive installations where kids painted panels and then flicked switches to see impact. Energy is art, it's community, it's change. As Helios continued this living journey, Elon's personal path evolved. He traveled less, but reflected more. He withdrew from media entirely, making his public remarks only at values workshops and annual advisory gatherings. He wrote essays for journals on technology and dignity and the heart of sustainable progress. He began guest lectures at universities, talking less about invention and more about listening, ethics, and belonging. Each region began telling its own Helios story, stories woven into culture, place, ancestry. Ultimately, Helios installations became community landmarks. A school courtyard in Kenya, a forest research hub in Finland, a marketplace energy share bank in Barcelona. Their emergence wasn't a victory of engineering, but a patchwork of trust earned and listened to voices answered. One evening, in a quiet moment at his estate library, Elon penned in his journal, "Our greatest invention wasn't Helios, it was the realization that technology must serve dignity. Without that, invention becomes intrusion. With it, it becomes invitation." He paused, letting the words settle. Elon going for a walk in his vineyards. He hears the wind, the quiet hum of distant Helios units. He closes his eyes and thinks not of rockets or patents, but of communities lighting up learning halls, preserving cultures, building futures. And in that moment, he feels a gentle peace, one born not of conquest, but of collaboration, not of flashes, but of dialogues, not of genius alone, but of humanity in unity. Elon Musk's journey with Helios had transformed from invention to stewardship, from technology to dignity, but it had also taught him that progress often demands more than brilliance, it demands sacrifice. As the movement matured, so did the costs, emotional, ethical, financial, and Elon faced a decision that would shape his legacy forever. In late autumn, news arrived that shook the alliance. Due to economic shifts, Helios microgrids in a vast region of rural Pakistan were facing shutdown. Rising import costs, local currency devaluation, and funding cuts endangered the entire power network. Farmers faced blackouts before sowing seasons, clinics risked losing refrigeration, schools teetered on the brink of darkness. Community leaders, already stretched thin, sent urgent appeals. Elon, in his quieter advisory role, felt a familiar surge of responsibility, but this time with no simple CEO-level fix. He convened an emergency virtual summit with Pakistani partners, local NGOs, and global alliance representatives. As the gravity of the crisis became clear, a painful truth emerged: if international donors didn't step in, Helios units would be mothballed. That would shatter not just local infrastructure, but global trust the alliance had spent years earning. Elon listened, his heart heavy. He understood that innovation without resilience was fragile, and now Helios faced exactly such a moment. The question wasn't technical, it was moral and financial. Would he and the alliance raise the funds to support a region in crisis? Could the global movement bear the cost of its commitment? The cost was high, tens of millions of dollars, logistical strain, and the precedent of intervention that might invite future dependency. Some board members cautioned against setting a global rescue expectation. But Elon, remembering the dignity of communities in Greenland and Syria, felt compelled. He spoke with quiet intensity: if we don't step in now, we risk turning a beacon of hope into a symbol of abandonment. And I can't stand by that. Within hours, Elon authorized an emergency fund to stabilize the Pakistan microgrid, covering operations for 18 months. He pledged personal contributions, legal support to lower import duties, and reallocation of alliance resources. It was a sacrifice, financial, reputational, and personal. Critics called it imprudent, some rivals seized on the move as weakness. But local communities, and the alliance, felt something deeper: solidarity. In Islamabad, small crowds gathered outside clinics and schools when Helios panels remained lit despite the crisis. Tears gleamed in candlelit rooms where children continued evening lessons. Farmers powered wells, not generators. Granny shops reopened at dusk. Word spread of the lights that refused to die. The crisis became a testament, not to technology, but to commitment. Meanwhile, Elon faced blowback in the boardroom. He held council meetings late into the night, detailing the decision, answering questions about sustainability, transparency, and precedent. He proposed building a community resilience fund within the alliance, a dedicated pool funded by sliding-scale contributions from more prosperous regions, philanthropists, and corporate partners. His pitch: this fund wouldn't be charity, it would be investment in solidarity, a mechanism not just to bail out, but to uphold the Charter's promise. The board deliberated. Internal voices urged caution. What if other regions expect bailouts? We risk draining funds from future development. But others spoke of purpose: this is what Helios stands for, not just power, but partnership. In the end, the board approved the fund. Elon's sacrifice had triggered broader ownership, a shared responsibility, not his alone. As winter approached, the Pakistan microgrid stabilized and began integrating local value chains, route repair efforts, agricultural partnerships, and renewable job fairs. Community cooperatives launched programs to boost solar entrepreneurship, creating local microindustries in inverter repair and energy auditing. Grant cycles emphasized sustainability. Communities would match funds and manage operations, not just receive aid. Globally, the move sparked discourse. Energy resilience is collective, not market-driven. New donors joined the fund. Governments cited the alliance model in policy documents. Critics softened, analysts noted. Helios rescuing Pakistan showcases technology's real test, when systems strain, not just shine. For Elon, the cost of sacrifice weighed heavily. He took few public appearances that season, choosing instead to visit Pakistan anonymously. He walked through fields with local leaders, met at night with engineers, sat silently in clinics, watched children study by Helios light. Not as a savior, but as a witness. Their stories confirmed something profound: sacrifice sows trust and transforms technology into covenant. When he returned home, he spent weeks crafting an essay, The Heart We Light, published in a global forum on technology and ethics. He wrote of the decision, the tension, the doubts, the relief. He wrote of having power, and the choice to share its cost. The essay ended with a poignant line: true progress demands that we learn to carry not just invention, but responsibility, and that sometimes, real change means our own sacrifice. The essay resonated. Universities assigned it. Think tanks debated it. Children in Pakistan read it in school. Donations flowed. Advocacy grew. The Community Resilience Fund became a central part of Helios governance: expected, transparent, covenantal. Elon, too, changed. He accepted a modest speakership fee that year, choosing instead to fund scholarships, mental health support for alliance leaders, and resilience training for community managers. He decreased his own compensation from advisory work, directing it toward resilience initiatives. We see Elon on a reflective walk through his private Helios research garden, a small plot growing native plants powered entirely by Helios lamp networks. He pauses, hands in the soil, feeling the quiet hum of panels overhead. He breathes deeply, aware of the weight he carries, the wisdom he has gained. And he smiles, knowing this sacrifice, is not the end, but the living heart of what has been, and what will be. When humanity chooses care over convenience. As the world slowly adjusted to the new energy paradigm ushered in by Helios, Elon Musk's vision had begun to take a life of its own, expanding far beyond the initial goals of clean power and innovation. It was a story of human resilience and interconnectedness, one that rippled across continents and cultures, inspiring hope in places where darkness had once ruled. But as the movement grew, so did the responsibility to nurture and sustain it. In the heart of the American Midwest, a town called Riverton had long suffered from economic decline and population loss. Coal mines and factories had shuttered, and many families faced uncertain futures. When the local council heard about Helios and its community-driven approach, they invited a delegation from the alliance to assess possibilities. What they found was a hunger not just for energy, but for revitalization, hope to rebuild a sense of pride and opportunity. Elon had heard about Riverton from afar and decided to visit in person. He was struck by the quiet streets, the faces marked by hardship but also by resilience. At the town hall, a crowd gathered, eager but cautious. Elon began with a simple question: what does hope look like to you? Responses flowed: jobs for youth, schools with light, a future beyond the decline. With the Alliance team, Elon helped launch a Helios microgrid pilot that incorporated solar panels atop abandoned warehouses, community-owned battery storage, and energy training centers. Local electricians and engineers received mentorship, and a cooperative formed to manage the system. But more than technology, what began to transform was the community's spirit. Neighborhood gatherings emerged around the microgrid hubs, mixing energy education with music, art, and storytelling. Children learned to read and write code, elders shared tales of the town's past. One of the residents, Maria Thompson, a high school teacher, became a leading voice for the project. She described how her students, once disengaged, found new passion. "Helios gave us light, yes," she said, "but also a chance to dream again." Maria organized workshops teaching coding and renewable energy principles, linking education to opportunity. She saw students develop projects for sustainable farming and water conservation, blending tradition with innovation. Meanwhile, local businesses began adopting Helios-powered solutions. Cafes installed solar charging stations for customers, farmers used solar pumps for irrigation, improving yield sustainably. The ripple effect was tangible, unemployment fell, school attendance rose, and community pride was reborn. Riverton became a model for post-industrial revival powered by clean energy and local empowerment. Elsewhere, in Lagos, Nigeria, Helios's influence sparked an unexpected cultural renaissance. Artists and musicians began incorporating energy themes into their work, celebrating the sun and wind that now powered their lives. Street murals depicted bright panels shining on rooftops, songs sang of light overcoming darkness. The Helios Alliance supported local artists by commissioning public art installations at microgrid hubs, turning infrastructure into cultural landmarks. The movement became not just about technology but about identity and joy. In Peru's Andes, indigenous communities integrated Helios technology with ancient practices. Solar panels were installed alongside traditional crops, energy-powered weaving cooperatives that preserved centuries-old textiles. Elders taught youth how to care for the land, while new energy solutions helped monitor climate changes and protect fragile ecosystems. The collaboration bridged generations, fostering respect for both heritage and progress. Elon watched these stories with growing humility. He had once seen Helios as a product, a breakthrough to save the planet. But the stories showed him it was a platform, one where hope was the most powerful current. The technology served as a conduit, connecting human dreams across oceans and mountains, urban streets and rural villages. As the movement matured, so did the challenges. Some regions faced political unrest threatening the stability of Helios installations, others struggled with the balance between modern energy access and preservation of cultural landscapes. The alliance responded by fostering dialogue, supporting local governance, and emphasizing that Helios was a tool, not a solution imposed but a partner embraced. Elon reflected on a visit to a small island in the Philippines where typhoon resilience was critical. The Helios system had been adapted to withstand extreme weather, with panels designed to flex and batteries stored underground. But beyond technology, the community's preparedness and solidarity were what made the difference. They had organized training, evacuation plans, and support networks that activated with every storm. Helios had become a symbol of hope and readiness. This philosophy, hope rooted in partnership and respect, became central to Helios's ongoing work. Elon and the Alliance leadership formalized this in a new guiding principle: energy is not merely power, but the promise of possibility. They expanded educational programs, supported leadership development, and fostered global exchanges where communities shared innovations and stories. Back in Silicon Valley, the spirit of hope inspired a new wave of innovation within Helios Labs. Engineers and social scientists collaborated closely to design technologies that were flexible, affordable, and culturally adaptive. They explored new energy storage materials, AI-driven grid management tuned to local needs, and community-driven data governance to protect privacy and autonomy. The global community embraced these innovations eagerly. Workshops in Kenya's Rift Valley taught women to assemble and maintain Helios units, youth-led hackathons in Brazil developed apps for energy sharing, urban gardens in Detroit used Helios power to grow fresh food and foster community wellness. Amid these successes, Elon's role shifted further from visionary inventor to compassionate mentor and humble listener. He emphasized that the greatest invention was not any single device, but the collective courage to hope and act together in the face of uncertainty. One evening, during a virtual gathering of global Helios ambassadors, Elon shared a simple message: every light we power is a story. A story of courage, resilience, and hope. Let us remember that our work is not finished. It is a journey we travel together, lighting the way for those who come after. As Chapter 16 closes, the ripple effect of hope extends, across continents and generations, through challenges and triumphs, illuminating not just homes and schools, but hearts and futures. Helios has become a beacon not just of energy, but of humanity's enduring capacity to transform darkness into light through connection, care, and shared dreams. Just when the Helios project seemed to have settled into a steady rhythm of success and global impact, Elon Musk encountered a challenge that no amount of technology or foresight could have prepared him for, a crisis born not from nature, but from the very unpredictability of human emotion and ambition. It began quietly with a message from a small coastal town in Oregon, a place where Helios had recently installed a community-powered microgrid. The town, once dependent on fossil fuels, had embraced solar and wind energy with enthusiasm. The Helios system had powered local schools, small businesses, and even a fishery that was adapting to sustainable practices. But then, strange reports emerged of unexplained power fluctuations, intermittent blackouts, and a rising sense of unease among residents. Elon's team sent technicians to investigate, expecting mechanical or software glitches. What they found, however, was more complicated: a group of local activists who opposed the Helios installation. Their concerns weren't about technology per se, but about what they perceived as an erosion of the town's identity and autonomy. They worried that the new system represented an outside force imposing change, threatening local traditions and governance. The activists organized protests and circulated petitions calling for the removal of Helios equipment. The town council became divided, and tensions escalated. Elon found himself confronting a challenge he had not fully anticipated: the social and cultural dimensions of innovation. Determined to understand, Elon traveled to Oregon himself. Walking the streets, attending town meetings, and listening without interruption, he encountered stories of loss: old jobs vanished, cultural landmarks forgotten, fear of losing control. He realized that technology, no matter how advanced, could not succeed without trust and cultural respect. In conversations with elders, fishermen, teachers, and youth, Elon learned about the importance of place-based knowledge and the need for technology to be flexible, responsive, and above all, inclusive. The community's resistance was not rejection but a plea to be heard and valued. This realization sparked a transformation in the Helios approach. Elon convened a task force combining engineers, sociologists, anthropologists, and local leaders to co-create a new model of deployment, one that prioritized deep engagement, cultural sensitivity, and adaptive governance. The team developed a community co-creation framework, a process that required multiple rounds of dialogue before, during, and after installation. Workshops explored local history, values, and concerns. Design decisions became collaborative, with community members influencing technical features, aesthetics, and governance structures. Helios installations began to reflect local art, language, and customs, making them integral parts of the social fabric rather than alien intrusions. The Oregon experience became a pilot for this new approach. Over months, as dialogue deepened, protests faded and were replaced by collaboration. A local artisan crafted solar panel frames inspired by traditional cedar carving. Youth groups co-designed an app for energy sharing that incorporated local storytelling. Elders participated in governance councils overseeing the microgrid's operation. The shift rippled beyond Oregon. Other regions facing cultural resistance embraced the co-creation model, recognizing that innovation must honor identity as much as function. Helios became a movement rooted not only in clean energy but in respect for diversity and voice. Elon reflected deeply on this unexpected chapter. He wrote in a journal entry, "Innovation is not a destination but a journey of relationships. Technology without empathy is hollow. To change the world, we must first listen to it." This experience also influenced Elon's public messaging. He began emphasizing that technological breakthroughs were not sufficient without social wisdom. In keynote speeches, he highlighted stories where collaboration shaped solutions, cautioning against technocratic arrogance. Back in Silicon Valley, Helios Labs integrated social science into engineering teams. New hires included cultural liaisons, community organizers, and ethics advisors. Research expanded into human-centered design, exploring how technology could adapt dynamically to diverse social contexts. The co-creation framework inspired new features, modular panels that communities could customize visually and functionally, software allowing local control over energy flows, transparent dashboards showing usage and environmental impact accessible to all. As trust grew, so did innovation. In a town in southern Italy, locals integrated Helios with ancient olive groves, using smart sensors and community decision-making to balance tradition and modern efficiency. In Japan, microgrids powered temples while preserving their aesthetic harmony. In Brazil, indigenous communities managed networks reflecting communal values and rituals. Elon's journey had come full circle, from a visionary inventor to a humble listener and facilitator. He recognized that technology's greatest power lay in its ability to foster connection, respect, and shared agency. The Helios project stands not just as a technological marvel but as a living example of how innovation meets the unexpected, when humanity and humility guide invention, when diversity is celebrated, and when the future is co-created with every voice at the table. Elon Musk's new invention had not only changed the world's energy but had awakened a deeper lesson: the true power of progress lies in the bonds we build along the way. Just as Helios seemed to be flourishing as a beacon of hope and resilience, Elon Musk faced another unforeseen challenge, one that tested not only the strength of his invention but the power of human connection across unlikely divides. This was a moment when innovation, diplomacy, and trust converged in a way that no blueprint or algorithm could fully prepare for. The story began with a surprising outreach from a former rival. In the corporate world, Elon had often encountered fierce competition, but this time the approach came from Dr. Evelyn Carter, CEO of Titan Energy Solutions, a global energy giant known for its dominance in fossil fuels and skepticism about renewable energy. Her invitation was simple yet startling: a request for a private meeting to discuss potential collaboration. At first, Elon was cautious. He had heard the critiques Titan had leveled against Helios publicly, questioning its scalability and economic viability. But curiosity and the urgency of global energy challenges prompted him to accept. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a sleek conference room overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Dr. Carter was direct. She spoke of shifting market realities, pressure from shareholders demanding sustainability, and a growing awareness that no single company could solve the world's energy crisis alone. "We need to combine forces," she said, "to leverage our strengths for a faster, more inclusive transition." The proposition was bold: Titan would bring its extensive infrastructure, capital, and market reach, while Helios would provide innovative technology and community engagement models. Together, they could scale clean energy access more rapidly than either could alone. Elon saw the potential but also the pitfalls. Trust between the companies was fragile. Their cultures differed sharply. Titan's hierarchical corporate model contrasted with Helios's decentralized, community-driven ethos. Moreover, there was public skepticism. Would this alliance dilute Helios's mission or compromise its values? Yet the stakes were too high to ignore. After intense discussions with his leadership team, Elon agreed to explore a pilot partnership, emphasizing transparency, shared governance, and clear commitments to environmental and social standards. The first joint project was ambitious: a vast renewable energy corridor spanning parts of the American Southwest, integrating Helios microgrids with Titan's utility-scale solar farms and smart grid technology. The initiative aimed to provide affordable, reliable clean power to underserved rural and tribal communities. Implementation required careful negotiation. Local stakeholders were wary of Titan's reputation, demanding assurances that community voices would guide deployment. Helios's co-creation framework was extended to the partnership, and advisory councils with equal representation from all parties were established. The collaboration sparked innovation on multiple fronts. Engineers from both companies worked together to develop hybrid systems combining microgrid flexibility with utility-scale efficiency. Data scientists integrated real-time analytics to optimize energy distribution, minimize waste, and respond to local needs dynamically. But beyond technology, the alliance opened pathways for dialogue and healing. Elon and Dr. Carter committed to joint public forums, engaging critics, advocates, and policymakers. They addressed concerns openly, acknowledging past mistakes and outlining shared visions for a just energy transition. Communities along the corridor began to experience tangible benefits, reduced energy costs, improved grid stability, and new jobs in renewable sectors. Education programs funded by the partnership introduced STEM curricula emphasizing sustainability and innovation. One memorable event was a tribal ceremony where local leaders blessed the installation of a Helios Titan hybrid microgrid, recognizing it as a symbol of renewal and respect for ancestral lands. Elon attended, humbled by the honor and aware that technology was entwined with culture and history. The partnership faced inevitable challenges, regulatory hurdles, market fluctuations, and occasional disagreements. Yet, a spirit of mutual respect and shared purpose prevailed. Elon learned the delicate art of compromise without losing core values, balancing ambition with patience. Media coverage portrayed the alliance as a groundbreaking experiment in corporate cooperation for planetary good. Environmental groups cautiously applauded the progress while maintaining vigilant oversight. Investors responded positively, seeing long-term potential. Within Helios, this alliance inspired a renewed commitment to openness and collaboration. Elon initiated innovation exchanges, where startups, NGOs, and industry leaders could share ideas and co-develop solutions, fostering an ecosystem rather than a silo. Reflecting on this journey, Elon wrote in his memoir, "Sometimes the most powerful invention isn't a machine or a system, it's the courage to build bridges where walls once stood." Our world's challenges demand that we unite, not just in technology, but in trust and vision. Elon and Dr. Carter planting a tree together at the Energy Corridor Center, a living testament to the power of unexpected alliances. The roots intertwining underground echoed the growing connections above. Reminding the world that when innovation meets openness and respect, even rivals can become partners in changing the world forever. As the Helios project continued to expand its impact worldwide, Elon Musk found himself grappling with the personal sacrifices that came with steering a revolution. The public spotlight, relentless pressure, and the burden of responsibility weighed heavily on him, revealing a more vulnerable side of the visionary that few had witnessed before. It was a chapter marked not only by global achievement but by intimate struggle and profound growth. From the outside, Elon seemed unstoppable, a pioneer leading humanity into a sustainable future. Yet behind closed doors, the pace of innovation and expectation had taken a toll on his health and relationships. Long nights, difficult decisions, and the constant scrutiny from media and critics left him exhausted and isolated. The pandemic-era years, with their blend of remote work and social distancing, had amplified a sense of loneliness. One of the sharpest pains was the distance growing between him and his family. Elon's intense dedication often meant missing important moments, birthdays, anniversaries, even the birth of his youngest child. His closest relationships strained under the weight of absence and distraction. Messages and calls went unanswered, apologies were frequent but insufficient. In moments of quiet, Elon confronted doubts he rarely admitted aloud: was the sacrifice worth it? Could one person bear the weight of changing the world without losing himself? These questions haunted him like shadows in the night. A turning point came during a rare visit home, where he found his teenage daughter struggling with anxiety and the challenges of growing up in the glare of public life. Their conversation was raw and honest, a breakthrough that forced Elon to reevaluate his priorities. He realized that true change required balance, between ambition and presence, vision and empathy. Seeking support, Elon began working with a therapist, opening himself to vulnerability and self-reflection. He shared with his team a renewed commitment to mental health and well-being, encouraging others to prioritize balance even amid urgency. This shift fostered a more sustainable culture within Helios Labs and the Alliance, where wellness became integral to innovation. Simultaneously, Elon leaned on close friends and longtime mentors who reminded him that strength often comes from connection, not isolation. Together, they helped him develop strategies to delegate, trust others, and embrace imperfection. The path forward was not about being perfect or omnipresent but about being authentic and resilient. In the midst of these personal challenges, a significant breakthrough in Helios Labs reignited Elon's spirit. A new prototype, a compact, ultra-efficient energy storage unit, promised to revolutionize off-grid power access, enabling communities in the most remote regions to harness clean energy independently. The prototype was named Aurora, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. Elon led the first field test of Aurora in the Himalayan foothills, where villages faced harsh winters and unreliable power. The success was immediate and profound: homes warmed, schools lit, and medical clinics equipped with reliable electricity for the first time. The gratitude and joy of the community rekindled Elon's sense of purpose. He documented the journey in a series of heartfelt video diaries, sharing not just technical triumphs but the stories of individuals whose lives were transformed. These personal narratives resonated deeply with audiences worldwide, humanizing the abstract concept of energy access. One story that stayed with Elon was of Tashi, a young girl who dreamed of becoming a doctor but had struggled with studying by candlelight. With Aurora powering her home, she was able to attend online classes and imagine a future brighter than ever. Her determination inspired Elon to remember that every invention's true value was measured in human lives changed. Back home, Elon balanced his public role with private healing. He reconnected with family through intentional time together, setting boundaries on work and social media. This balance did not diminish his ambition but enriched it, grounding innovation in empathy and presence. The media began to notice this evolution. Profiles shifted from portraying Elon as a relentless tech mogul to highlighting his human side, the father, friend, and learner. Public reception softened, and a wave of support emerged not just for Helios but for leaders who embraced vulnerability and authenticity. As Chapter 19 closes, Elon stands at a window overlooking the bustling city below, reflecting on the journey with a quiet smile. The path had been arduous, filled with sacrifice and uncertainty, but also illuminated by moments of grace and connection. He understood now that true triumph was not measured solely by invention or acclaim but by the courage to grow, to heal, and to lead with heart. The final lesson of this chapter is clear: in the pursuit of changing the world, the greatest victory is finding balance within oneself, a harmony of purpose and presence that fuels enduring impact and fulfillment. Elon Musk's story was no longer just about a new invention, it was about the transformation of a man who dared to dream, stumble, and rise again, inspiring others to do the same. Elon Musk reflects on the profound legacy his invention has begun to weave into the fabric of humanity's future. What started as a revolutionary leap in energy technology had blossomed into a movement, a beacon of hope, resilience, and transformation touching lives across continents and generations. Yet, Elon knew that true legacy wasn't built by machines alone, but by the people empowered to carry the light forward. The world had changed remarkably since the first Helios panel was installed. Cities that once choked on smog now breathed cleaner air, remote villages that had lived in darkness for decades now hummed with possibility, economies shifted toward sustainability and innovation, and global cooperation emerged as a new standard for solving humanity's greatest challenges. Yet, the journey was far from over. Elon recognized that legacy meant more than achievement, it meant stewardship and inspiration. It meant planting seeds for a future where innovation and compassion walked hand in hand, where the next generation could rise without the burdens of the past. In his final public address as the chairperson of the Helios Alliance, Elon stood before a global audience gathered both in person and virtually. The setting was symbolic, a vast field of solar panels gleaming under the rising sun, children playing nearby, elders sharing stories, and scientists and citizens united. His voice carried a mixture of humility, hope, and determination. Today, we celebrate not just an invention, but a movement sparked by the belief that energy is a right, a gift, and a responsibility. Helios is more than technology, it is a promise, that we will harness our ingenuity to protect our planet, uplift our communities, and connect across cultures. Our journey has been shaped by challenges, setbacks, and breakthroughs, but above all by the unwavering human spirit. He paused, looking out over the crowd and the millions watching worldwide. Our work is a testament to what we can achieve when we listen, learn, and act together. But this is only the beginning. The true legacy lies in the hands of all of you, the dreamers, the doers, the guardians of our shared home. Elon's words resonated deeply. Around the globe, stories emerged of how Helios had become woven into the everyday fabric of life. In schools, students learned about renewable energy through hands-on projects, inspired by the real-world impact of Helios. In communities, cooperative ownership models empowered people to manage resources democratically and sustainably. In research centers, new generations of innovators built upon Helios's foundation, pushing boundaries in energy storage, grid management, and environmental stewardship. The Alliance formalized a global fellowship program, inviting young leaders from diverse backgrounds to collaborate, exchange ideas, and develop projects addressing local and global challenges. This program became a crucible of creativity and leadership, a living legacy of empowerment and connection. Elon, stepping back from daily operations, took on the role of mentor and storyteller. He traveled to remote regions where Helios had reached, listening to voices, sharing experiences, and reminding everyone that the future depended on nurturing not just technology but values, empathy, respect, courage. In a quiet moment overlooking a hillside of solar arrays, Elon mused on the journey. The invention that had once seemed like a singular breakthrough had grown into a global tapestry of hope and action. He thought of the faces he had met, the teachers, activists, children, elders, each a thread in the story of light overcoming darkness. He knew challenges would continue. Climate change, social inequality, political unrest, but he was confident that the spirit of Helios, the commitment to listen, adapt, and unite, would endure. The greatest invention was not a device or system, but a movement that empowered humanity to forge a better path together. Before closing his reflections, Elon shared a final message: life is full of surprises, but love and hope will always lead the way. The future is ours to build, not alone, but as one. May we carry this light forward, illuminating the path for generations yet to come. Chapter 20 closes with a panoramic view of the Earth from space, where a glowing network of Helios-powered communities sparkles like constellations, each a testament to human resilience, innovation, and the enduring power of hope. Elon Musk's new invention had indeed changed the world forever, not just by providing energy, but by inspiring a legacy that lights the future. The story ends on a powerful note. The real revolution is ongoing, alive in every heart and home that chooses to shine brighter, to connect deeper, and to dream bigger. The legacy of Helios is a living flame, one that will burn as long as humanity dares to imagine and act with love. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?